let me ask you a question. How far would you go to save your city? I mean, really, would you risk your life? Sure. Endure torture? Maybe. But what about destroying a part of yourself on purpose just to prove a point?
Well, that's the story we're diving into today. It's the legend of a guy named Gaius Mucius. He was this young Roman, and way back in 508 BCE, he took what was an absolutely botched assassination attempt and somehow turned it into one of the most incredible acts of psychological warfare you've ever heard of. And this is how he earned his famous nickname, Scaevola, which means the left-handed one.
Okay, so to really get what makes his story so insane, you first have to understand just how bad things were for Rome at the time. We're talking about the brand new Roman Republic, and they were in a really, really tough spot.
So, picture this. It's 509 BCE. The Romans have just kicked out their very last king, Tarquin, and they founded the Republic. It's this huge moment. But just 1 year later, an Etruscan king, this guy named Lars Porsenna, shows up and lays siege to the city. He's got them completely surrounded. The siege drags on, food is getting scarce, the people are literally starving. Rome is on the absolute brink of collapse.
And right in the middle of all this chaos and hopelessness, there's this one young patrician, Gaius Mucius. He's just watching his city starve, and he decides, nope, I can't just stand by and let this happen. He knows someone has to do something really drastic.
And that, of course, brings us to his plan. It was a mission that was about as simple as it was deadly.
So what does he do? He marches right into the Roman Senate and basically asks for permission to go on a suicide mission. The plan was pretty straightforward. Step 1, sneak into the enemy camp. Now, he could do this because he actually spoke their language, so he figured he could blend in. Step 2, find King Porsenna. Step 3, kill him. Simple, right? If he pulls it off, the siege ends. If he fails, well, he dies. No in between.
So he killed the wrong man. I mean, it was a spectacular failure. He manages to slip into the camp, finds what he thinks is the king's tent. He sees two guys up on a platform who look important. One of them is dressed to the nines, super fancy clothes. The other guy is just handing out pay to the soldiers. So Mucius makes an assumption. He figures the guy in the fancy robes has to be the king. He rushes forward, dagger out, and stabs the king's secretary. Whoops. He's captured, instantly.
So, let's recap. The mission's a total bust, he's been captured, and now he's being dragged in front of the actual king he was trying to kill. By all accounts, this should be the end of the story for Gaius Mucius. But you know what? This is actually where the legend begins.
So instead of begging for his life, which is what anyone would expect, Mucius just stands there in front of King Porsenna with this unbelievable defiance. He looks the king in the eye and says, I am a Roman citizen. I came here as an enemy to kill an enemy. I am as ready to die as I was to kill. He's basically telling him, go ahead, do your worst. Death doesn't scare me one bit.
And then, just to hammer the point home, he says something like, watch this, and you'll see how little the body means to men who are seeking great glory. He turns, walks over to the sacrificial fire burning on a nearby altar, and he thrusts his right hand directly into the flames. And he just holds it there. He doesn't scream, he doesn't even flinch. He just stands there, calmly watching his own hand burn away.
You can just imagine the scene. A completely stunned King Porsenna shouts at his guards to pull Mucius away from the fire. So they do, and as Mucius stands there, his right hand completely ruined and useless, he delivers his masterstroke. He looks at the king and tells him that he was just the first one, that there are 300 other young Romans, just like him, who have all sworn the same oath to kill the king, and they're just going to keep coming, one by one by one.
Just stop and think about that for a second. Put yourself in Porsenna's shoes. What does this do to your world? How could you possibly defend against a threat like that? The next assassin might not be some guy sneaking into your camp. It could be anyone. It could be your own guard. It could be the servant who brings you dinner. It could be just a shadow in the dark. In that one moment, Mucius turned his personal failure into a campaign of pure psychological terror.
So what happened next? Well, the effect of this incredible act of defiance was immediate, and it was profound. Mucius went back to Rome not as a failed assassin, but as an absolute hero.
And this is the central irony of the whole story, right? On a tactical level, his mission was a complete and utter disaster. He killed the wrong guy and got caught immediately. But strategically? Oh, it was a brilliant victory. King Porsenna was so terrified, realizing he couldn't possibly win against an enemy that just didn't care about pain or death, that he sent Mucius home and immediately started negotiating for peace. Just like that, the siege was over. Rome was saved.
So back in Rome, you can imagine Mucius was treated like a rock star. He was given land, he was celebrated, and most importantly, he was given a new name, a cognomen. They called him Scaevola, which is Latin for the left-handed one. Think about that. What should have been a symbol of his failure, of his disability, was transformed into this legendary badge of honor. It was a name his family would carry with pride for hundreds of years.
Okay, so it's a pretty incredible story, right? But what does it all mean? What can we take away from the legend of Mucius Scaevola? What does it really tell us about the Romans, and maybe even about the nature of strength itself?
Well, the core lessons here are pretty powerful. For one thing, it shows that pure, raw willpower can sometimes overcome military might. Yeah, Porsenna's army was way stronger, but he just couldn't break the Roman spirit. And that leads to the second point. For the Romans, the ultimate values weren't just about winning. It was about having the courage to act, and maybe even more importantly, having the strength to endure. His mission was a failure, but his spirit, that's what saved the city.
And that really brings us back to what Mucius himself said, right? That quote, "Both to act and to suffer bravely is the Roman way." That one line just perfectly sums up the ideal he represented. It wasn't enough to just fight bravely, you also had to suffer bravely. That idea was at the very core of what it meant to be Roman.
And this is where the story's legacy gets even more interesting. Some historians think the legend might have started out as a totally different story, maybe about a Roman traitor being punished by having his hand burned off, but who showed no fear. And over time, that story morphed into this tale of voluntary sacrifice. But whatever its origin, its power is undeniable. I mean, this story inspired thinkers for centuries. The philosopher Rousseau apparently tried to do it when he was a kid. And even a young Friedrich Nietzsche, that Nietzsche, burned his own hand trying to prove that the story could be true, to test his own will.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. We live in a world that so often measures power by what you can do to other people, what you can inflict. But the story of Mucius Scaevola flips that on its head. It forces us to ask, is true strength about what you can dish out, or is it about what you yourself are willing to endure?